Welcome to this episode of the Drumroll podcast this week featuring Brian Williams.
Well,
Welcome.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm so glad to be here and great to get to know you a little bit. We talked a bit before we started the interview, and I'm anxious to tell a story about my crazy evolution of life in music.
I'm anxious to hear about it. So your musical background goes back to when you were a young person. You mentioned these American hotel shows. It seems like you started up with banjo and guitar
I
as
did.
a young man.
Well, let me
So
back up
tell
a
us a
little
little
bit.
bit about it. Yeah,
I'll back up a little bit. I'm older than maybe some of your other guests. I'm a child of the 50s, so I grew up on rock and roll.
Yeah.
And we would listen to WINS radio out of New York City, where you could actually call in requests for songs and dedicate the songs to your girlfriend
Really?
or boyfriend, depending. And we just were glued to the radio every evening after school, and we just lived and breathed rock and roll music at the time.
Yeah.
And I went off to college. I was in school in the 60s, and that was also the time of the beginning of the folk music revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And my musical interest shifted to string band music and folk music. In fact, I started playing guitar when I was in college, just strumming, nothing fancy, nothing that you'd ever want to put on the radio or anything, but just to entertain myself. And I graduated college and went off, and this was at the height of the Vietnam War in 1967. And if you didn't have a draft deferment or some way to avoid being drafted, you were going to Vietnam, and it was a very unpopular war. So my senior year in college, I interviewed a number of companies that had set up shop in the student union, and my first question for each of them was, can you get me a draft deferment? And I finally found a company that said, yes, we can, and I signed on with them, and that began my official, legitimate career working in technology at the time. But I found myself not feeling it was a good fit for me. And I left that job and went to enroll at a master's program at RIT, at the School for American Craftsmen, to get a Master of Fine Arts degree. And while I was there, you'd be wondering, when is he going to start talking about the music? While I was there, I hooked up with some fellow classmates who were musicians as well, and every lunch break we would camp out in the hallway and we would just play string band music or whatever we felt like playing. And fast forward a little bit, one of us learned that there was going to be a party in a tent out in the country where some fellow who was developing land and selling lots, he wanted to just entertain possible prospects and asked if we would play at his party. And while we were there, the new owner of the Cottage Hotel in Mendon happened to be present, and he wanted to change the clientele in his club from farmers who would come in at 4 o'clock every afternoon and just drink little pints of beer and whiskey chasers or whatever. And he said, I want you guys to come in and play my joint 3 nights a week for as long as you want. And we looked at each other and thought, well, we can't do that. We don't have enough material. And one of the fellows said, yes, we'll do it. We'll start next Friday. And we went home every night and we woodshedded until we had enough music to put together a complete evening of entertainment. And that was where we learned how to play music professionally at the Cottage Hotel in Mendon in 1972. And it was a wonderful experience, and our repertoire just started growing and getting bigger, and we thought, well, heck, we're playing this kind of music and it comes from the South. Why don't we go down the Appalachian Mountains and play at some of the music festivals, the fiddlers conventions down there, which we did, and we started winning first and second place prizes and making money going to these festivals, and we thought, whoa, this is pretty good. So we did that for about 2 years, and if you do the math, 3 nights a week for 2 years, it's quite a few gigs, and we really learned our craft while doing that. And interestingly enough, while one of the shows, Bob Henry Sr. and Loretta Henry brought their kids down to hear the music at the Cottage Hotel, which was now getting a lot of traction. There was even articles in the newspaper, and TV crews came out and recorded us, just because there was nobody doing what we were doing in the Rochester area at that time. Anyway, the Henry family came on down and they heard us play, and they went home that evening and stayed up till 4 in the morning, and the eldest, Bill Henry, assigned different instruments to the various 5 brothers, and they said, we're starting a string band. And they called themselves the Henry David Thoreau Memorial String Band, which was too much of a tongue twister, and after a time they converted it to the Henry Brothers String Band. So those guys were playing string band music. Now we've got 2 string bands in the area. And also at the Cottage Hotel, which we were just attracting, we're like a magnet for other musicians who wanted to find out what's going on. A young lad, he just turned 17, John Mooney, who grew up in Mendon, had come down to the hotel and asked if he could sit in on our breaks. And we thought, oh, this young kid, but we gave him a shot, and within the first 5 seconds, we knew that he had it. He had something going. Well, in fact, he had been spending time with the great legendary Son House, who was from Mississippi and who had landed in Rochester because he got a job working on the New York Central Railroad.
Yeah.
So he was learning how to play blues, Mississippi-style slide guitar blues from the incredible Son House.
I think there's a memorial to Son House in East Rochester now.
There may be. I know there's a plaque in downtown Rochester in what's called the 4th Ward, which is where Son lived.
Okay, that may be where it is. I feel like there's one near like the car shops in East Rochester or something
there might be,
like
yeah.
that. He certainly made a local impact.
Yeah, yeah. So as things happened, some of the folks in my string band, which I don't think I mentioned, it was called the Swamp Root String Band, went separate ways, and John had now turned 18, and he wanted to be making a living playing music. And when he would sit in on our breaks, I would pick up I was playing banjo and guitar at the time. I would pick up the bass player's bass fiddle and accompany John. And it kind of evolved into a band. So the Swamp Root Band ended and the John Mooney Blues Band started.
Yeah.
And we got a booking agent, and for 10 years we traveled all over, from Maine to Florida to New Orleans to Chicago.
Wow.
And we were just making a name for ourselves, and we did a couple of recordings with Blind Pig Records, which was based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I brought along a little sample of the John Mooney Blues Band that I'll play for you, just a few seconds worth to give your listeners and your audience a taste of what that was like at the time. So here we go. Here's John and me and a couple of the other fellas. And this is recorded in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Now baby, please, 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 please be sweet to me. If you're sweet to me, darling, you can set me free. Now baby, please, please.
So the band was made up of me on bass, John on guitar, a piano player, Bob Cooper, and Nick Langan playing harmonica.
Wow.
You mean that much to me.
There you go.
Cool. Let me just check something.
fine. I just wanted to double check just to, I don't know, sometimes we
The
get into
volume?
these. Yeah, sometimes.
It's good though. Okay, perfect. Sometimes we get into them and then I get a little bit like, did I double check that again? And I did. So anyway, that's great. John Mooney Blues Band.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and we played in 1976. We did 25 gigs in 23 days.
Wow.
For example, we would play a gig in Ann Arbor, Michigan. We would, at the end of the gig, drive all night, arrive in Rochester, and play for the 5K runners who were coming back at the Cornhill Festival for them, and then we would do a show at Manhattan Square Park, and then that evening open for a sleep at the wheel at the Triangle Theater, which is now called the Harrow East.
Okay.
Yeah.
What a beautiful room.
Yeah, yeah. So we had a lot of fun, but John was taken off like a rocket, and he moved to New Orleans, and we tried to keep the band together, but I was destined to stay in Rochester, and he was in New Orleans, and the other fellows ended up being in Philadelphia and Massachusetts. So the band basically unraveled at that point. And coincidental with that, Bobby Henry, who was playing guitar with his brothers, the Henry brothers that I mentioned earlier, well, he had gotten the rockabilly itch, and he was playing electric guitar, and he wanted to put together a rockabilly band. Now, bear in mind, I met Bobby when he was 9 years old, when he came to the Cottage Hotel in Mendon. Well, fast forward, he's now 21 years old and wants to start a band, and he called me up because I was no longer working with John, and we started Bobby Henry and the Goners with me and Bobby and the great Jimmy Simons on drums. And that was 39 years ago. We've been together
You're still going.
that long. We're still going. We have a gig tomorrow, in fact, up at Lux Lounge in
Wow.
Rochester. Yeah.
What a cool spot.
Yeah. So to give you a sense of what that's like, let me just play you a little bit of this is Bobby Henry and the Goners. This is recorded probably in 1988.
Well, Saturday night and Gobson no going to pick up my baby and head for the road. Hit every joint in town tonight's gonna be so rock and ride. We're gonna rock, we're gonna rock all over town. We're gonna rock, we're gonna keep on rolling on.
Now I should comment, Bobby is left-handed, and when they put together the Henry Brothers band, this is before the Goners, there was one guitar in the house that belonged to his mother, and it was strung righty. And,
Naturally.
and Bobby wasn't going to, the family wasn't going to let him restring the guitar to be lefty, so he learned to play a righty strung guitar lefty. They call it unorthodox lefty, flip lefty. And excuse me, he has played that style of guitar for probably most of his adult life. However, he also learned how to play a lefty guitar lefty. So when we're playing this gig tomorrow at Lux, as I mentioned, and he's going to bring a righty strung guitar and a lefty strung guitar, but he's going to play both of the lefties.
Just to show everybody
Yeah.
what a cool guy he is.
There you go. So we've had a good time working together. But most of my musical career has been primarily as an accompanist or a sideman, and I have a percussive style of playing. It's kind of based on the rockabilly bass playing, but also goes back to the early days of ragtime jazz and other styles of music, which involve the playing a slap style on the upright bass.
Mm.
And because of that, I get calls from people who want me to accompany them using that style of music. And I got a text message one day from a fellow named Roy Burns, who I knew vaguely from afar as a good guitar player. And he said, "Do you want to start a French gypsy jazz inspired band?" And I texted back to him, "I think you may have the wrong guy. That's not what I do." And he said, "No, I know what you do. Let's just give it a try." So we got together at his house, and with the understanding that if I didn't want to do this kind of music, I would say so, and we would end it. And if they didn't like what I was doing, they would say so, and we would end it. Well, we played for about an hour, and we all looked at each other, and there was also an accordion player in the band. And he said, let's do it. And Roy, at the time, was a professor of color science at Rochester Institute of Technology.
Wow, that's niche.
Which, and his forte was light and how light can affect things. And he's written some pieces on great masterworks of art and how they should be displayed. And
Really?
Anyway, he thought Lumiere would be the right name for a band that's playing French jazz. Lumiere, French is light.
Yeah.
So there we go. And I'll play you a snippet of that band. You might get a kick out of it. Makes you think of strolling down the Champs-Élysées in Paris.
Absolutely.
It's very romantic music, and it's so much fun to play, and audiences love it just because it takes them to another place,
Oh yeah.
another country.
There's a lot of imagery in it without it saying anything.
Exactly. Yeah. This happens to be called Waltz de Negros, which is Waltz of the Hedgehog.
Aww. I love that.
Yeah.
How cool.
Yeah, in fact, it was popularized by a gentleman named Django Reinhardt, you may know. He was of gypsy lineage, and he was injured in a fire that damaged his hand, and he lost the use of the last two fingers. And at that time, when he was injured, he was playing banjo as a young lad and making a living at it. But part of his rehabilitation to get use of the remaining fingers of his hand, he learned to play guitar. So he learned to play guitar with 3 fingers. And he developed an amazing style of playing known as gypsy jazz. And he's probably one of the most influential guitar players in the history of guitars. Most present-day guitar players, including B.B. King, who's passed on, Eric Clapton, and others, credit Django Reinhardt for influencing them. Anyway, I got a call following that to join a jazz combo. Once again, I thought, are you sure you have the right guy? I play roots music, string band music and rock and roll. But Charlie Frieda, who goes by the professional name Charlie Mitchell, said, "No, I know what you got. I know what you do. Let's give it a shot." And I joined the Charlie Mitchell group, and I thought you might enjoy hearing a piece from that band. Charlie plays saxophone. It's a 4-piece band: sax, bass, piano, and a great female drummer. Really, she's really in the pocket.
Yeah.
This is Old Devil Moon.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I love that. So it seems like others have more vision, like historically have had more vision for what you can do than you ever would have thought initially.
I credit to just being at the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
More than anything else. And also the fact that folks like that I play a heavy-handed bass. It's pretty strong and punctuated, which a lot of folks feel that that's what they want to add to the sound that they're presently doing.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to oblige.
Yeah. Cool.
And way back in the John Mooney days, we did work with a wonderful harmonica player, Rockin' Fred Palmer, who learned to play harmonica when he was going to school at the University of Chicago, and he would go to the blues clubs every night and became befriended by some of the great blues players, Junior Wells and Buddy Guy, And I'm not sure who labeled him Rockin' Red. He had red hair at the time. He's
Okay.
kind of gray now, but anyway, as a side project, Red, I call him Red, Rockin' Red, and the great guitarist Fred Vine and I put together a blues trio to kind of fill in the gaps when the Goners didn't have gigs or whatever. And we called it Red, Fred, and Weems, Weems for Williams. And we did that for a couple of years, and it's just the most beautiful music, largely because of Fred's incredible three-finger picking style on guitar and Rockin' Red's harmonica, which is so soulful. I don't know of any harmonica player in the area at all that plays harmonica like Rockin' Red Palmer, and I'll let you judge for yourself. I'll give you a little snippet of Red, Fred, and Williams. When I die at my funeral, I want Red playing harmonica when they lower me in the ground.
Yeah. This is awesome.
And this is a song that Fred Vine wrote.
Okay.
Oh, I really am amazed how we just fit like hand and glove. Yeah, I really am
Notice Red
amazed
never
how
steps
we
on the
just fit
vocal.
like hand and glove.
He always comes in after the beat and knows
Turns
exactly
out even better
when to play and when not to
Then
play.
if I'd have dreamed someone to love.
There you go, Red, Fred, and Weems.
Awesome. Cool. You definitely can hear that you guys just fit together so naturally, and the interplay between the vocals and the harmonica, it's the nuance, and they just get it.
Exactly, and you know, I think a lot of musicians, when they start out, when they're not seasoned yet, they're younger, but they've got the drive and the energy, oftentimes tend to overplay or not leave enough space in their music. And as you just heard in this piece, there's a lot of air in there and openness. And Rockin' Red, he's a national treasure, like I said.
Yeah.
Anybody who wants to hear him on the day I die, you can hear him playing at my funeral.
Is he a Rochester musician also?
He is,
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Anyway, the band Lumiere with Roy Burns and Ed Maris on accordion had to come to an end because Ed Maris left the area and Roy had injured his shoulder, and he had to have shoulder surgery, which was going to be a year's recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And but we had developed a following playing gypsy jazz, and Bobby Henry, once again the savant that he is, had been studying the music of Django Reinhardt ever since he was younger, and he wanted to put together a gypsy jazz band. And we called up some friends of ours from Ithaca, the Aceto brothers, Eric Aceto and Harry Aceto. Eric plays violin, and Harry is a great bass player, but he also is a wonderful rhythm guitar player. And we assembled the Jangoners. And we called it the Jangoners because Bobby Henry and the Goners, I'm a Goner with Bobby. And Eric and Harry had a band in Ithaca called Jug Django,
Perfect.
playing Django Reinhardt music. So we thought, well, the Jangoners.
It'll
It's a mix
do.
of the Goners.
Yeah.
And here's a little snippet of that band. And this is a song written by Django Reinhardt called Manoir de mes rêves, the house of my dreams.
Wow.
If anybody out there knows French, Manoir de mes rêves. And Eric, who's playing fiddle here, makes his own violins. That's his day job. That's what he does for a living.
Oh my gosh. Wow. What a profession. What a cool opportunity that
So
was.
he's making the fiddles during the day and playing them by night.
That's like a movie almost.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
And in fact, we would play regularly together. I think now it's got to be 10 or 15 years.
Wow.
We've got some gigs coming up soon at the Little Theater Cafe in Rochester.
Okay. That will be a not to miss event.
I'd say so.
I
yeah.
think that will be amazing. I have had the opportunity to see both the Goners and the Jen Goners and just loved it. I was not aware of gypsy jazz until, well, I suppose I was pretty young when I was first introduced to the group, but what a just unique variety of music that is so fun to listen to and just not like widely appreciated. I feel like not widely known, at least.
Well,
appreciated once people are into it.
We are thrilled to introduce folks to the music who haven't heard it before or are not familiar with it.
Yeah.
It's very accessible. It's fun. It doesn't require that you have to pay close attention. It creates a wonderful mood
Yeah.
in the room, and people just find themselves feeling good about themselves in the presence of that kind of music.
Yeah.
It's really wonderful. I'm thrilled to be able to play it.
Yeah.
And once again, I'm blessed to be able to work with the absolute best musicians in each genre.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Speaking of which, a few years ago, I got a call from Todd Bradley, who had been playing with the High Risers.
Right.
Wonderful band with Greg Townsend and a variety of drummers, including Jim Simons, who is with the Goners now, and then later Jason Smay, and now Trevor Lake. But the High Risers were kind of splintering off and going into side projects, and Todd Bradley didn't have a project at the time. And he went away to think about what he wants to do next musically. He's just so talented. He has a 3.5 octave vocal range. It's just incredible. And he came back from a week-long sabbatical, if you want to call it, out on Cape Cod, and he called me and said, let's start a bossa nova band. And once again, I thought, are you sure you got the right guy? But we agreed to do that, and for 2 months, we got together a couple of times a week, and we assembled our book of bossa nova tunes, from traditional tunes from the late 50s and early 60s, when bossa nova first hit with Girl from Ipanema was the one that put bossa nova on the map back then, to all sorts of very familiar songs and also some very unfamiliar bossa nova music.
Cool.
And we did that for about 2 months, and then, and I know that you know the Bradley family because
I do.
you lived across the street from Mark.
Yep.
We asked Mark to come join us. Mark is the younger of the 3 Bradley brothers, Mark, Todd, and Scott. Mark plays sax. Todd in this band, this bossa nova band, plays guitar, although he was a bass player in the High Risers. And he, of all things, he has a drum degree from college, percussion. He has a degree in percussion. And then the older brother, Scott Bradley, a great keyboard player and also plays flugelhorn. We put all of those fellows together, and we had one rehearsal and tightened up the band and went and started playing out just
The
like
rest
that.
was history.
Because those fellows are so talented, we didn't need to spend 6 months rehearsing.
Yeah.
And I'd like to play a sample of that. And by the way, Todd, because it's bossa nova, it's from Brazil, and Portuguese is the national language.
Mhm.
Todd sings almost all of the songs in Portuguese. And he doesn't know the language. And in fact, when we would play a gig, if there are Brazilians in the audience, they'll come up on break and engage Todd in conversation in Portuguese. And he said, I'm sorry, I don't speak it.
Oh my gosh.
So he's learned all of the lyrics phonetically. Here you go. Here's the Bossa Nova Bradley Brothers. With Todd singing in Portuguese. Here we go. And the secret weapon in this band is Julio Pabon playing percussion.
Okay.
Conga drums. You can hear.
quando tiene messo moro, toda a cidade vai cantar.
Here we go.
Moro pede passagem, moro quer se mostrar. Abra malas pro moro, tamborim vai falar em e dois, e três, e
All right.
How cool! That really sets an atmosphere too. The
Oh,
serious, like, especially with him singing in Portuguese, it just kind of takes you somewhere else.
it's a wonderful thing, yeah. And I know we're probably getting short on time, but just to share with you, when I was playing with the Goners before some of these other bands, we became aware of a young lad on the scene. At the time I first became aware of him, he was 16 years old, Aaron Lipp. And he was a great keyboard piano player, and he put together a giant Panda Gorilla dub squad.
Yep.
And then, I think he might have been 15 or 16 years old at the time. I hope I got that right. Anyway, he missed his own high school graduation because he was on tour with his band.
What a move.
Yeah.
I would have done the same, probably.
And he, in addition to being a great keyboard player, he was very much influenced by the guitar playing of Bobby Henry, and also by the banjo playing of Richie Stearns, who's a great banjo player from the Ithaca area.
Mm-hmm.
And he started experimenting with the stringed instruments, not just exclusively to the keys, and has turned into one of the most amazing guitar players, banjo players, fiddlers, and has had a number of bands. Each one has had Aaron's touch, and they are all fantastic. The Cabin Killers is one of the bands, and then he had the Slack Tones, and I was fortunate enough to hook up with Aaron during the Slack Tones era, before he has started as almost a little bit more than a year ago with the Sam Grisman project. And I know you've had some of the fellas
Yes.
with Sam and Rick.
Yes. Trying to get them all. I've had Sam and Rick so far.
You
so
gotta get Aaron in
I
for
know.
an interview.
I want to get Aaron and Chris in here, and I had Max who sat in with them
Max-
at the
Max
Riviera.
Flansburgh.
Yeah, Max Flansburgh. So I'm hoping to get Chris and Aaron in here. So far, we're kind of out of the way for them, so there might be a field trip in order. We might do a conversations
Well,
from Drumroll from.
Take it on the road.
Yeah.
You bet.
I'd like to take it on the road.
Yeah.
I'll take any excuse.
Anyway, I did a little bit of recording with Aaron, and I'd like to play a cut of that. I'm just so pleased to work with Aaron. He's a man who, I have to say, I love him dearly, and we tell each other we love one another. It's like having a love affair with someone, because every time I see him, I feel better about myself, and I walk away happier than I was beforehand.
Yeah.
And I look forward to the next time we're going to get together, which is what I think love is all about.
Yeah. What a special relationship to be able to have.
Yeah.
Especially, a lot of people I think find themselves rooted in their family, and they're very intimate people, and I think that music particularly lends itself to being able to create these really strong, important connections between people who aren't necessarily in your everyday life.
Indeed.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That you're able to do that.
Well, let's hear. This is a song that Aaron wrote called "Forgive My Sweet Desire," and we won't play the whole thing, but the theme of the song is a fella who has this desire for this woman that he's unable to realize. So, forgive my sweet desire. Here you go. Got a great lap steel player on this, Gary Meisner.
It is your face I see when I'm alone. to me how I wish you were my home. But it's no use, I do not hold the things that you require. Darling, forgive my sweet desire.
He's such a good song craftsman.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, and the steel guitar in there really ties it all together.
And Aaron's playing fiddle on this. He double track fiddle on top of it.
Of course.
Yeah. And I'm so happy for Aaron to be able to be traveling and touring nationally and doing it the right way. Well, I guess the right way would be having a tour bus. They're still traveling in cars and vans, but
They're getting there.
I think their first gig in February is tonight somewhere in Arizona. I
Cool.
believe. And then they're heading to California and so on.
Wow. Cool. That's great.
But before we leave this interview, I want to share an interesting story. My good buddy Frank DeBlaze, who has written for a city newspaper, and years ago he had a band called the Frantic Flat Tops, and they were a real hit nationally, and they even toured Europe. And that band wound down, and partly because Frank had to stop playing music to the extent that he had because he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. And it affected his motor skills a little bit. He couldn't play guitar in the same way. He would have to tune it to an open tuning and play a bar chord on it if he was going to play guitar at all. And he also developed a stammer. He couldn't get his words out. But he was and is a great poet and author as well. He's written a number of novels. The name of one of them is Pine Box for a Pinup. It's like a dime novel, mystery underworld. Anyway, he had all these poems, kind of like beatnik poetry. And we discovered, I was visiting one day, and I started playing the bass fiddle, just the bass alone, not any other instrumentation. And Frank was able to recite his poetry without stuttering or stammering at all, as long as I was playing bass behind him. So we decided to put together this project. Frank came up with the name Busted Valentines, which is also the name of a book of his poetry. And we would start to write songs together. Actually, Frank is writing the songs. He would just say, start playing a bass line, and I would inventively, off the cuff, start playing an intricate little bass lick, and he would just put lyrics to it. And I want to give you an example of it here. This is Busted Valentines, and I don't know why he named this song Iceberg, but here it is. So there's the bass line.
Nice.
And that's all it is for the whole song. I changed the key and then come back again.
All pimp, no limp. Baby, I move along, all swagger, no stagger. There ain't nothing wrong. All thriller, no filler. Man, I feel alright. All game, no shame. Won't you be mine tonight? All swank, no wank. Baby, I like your shoes. All swing, no sting. When I sing the blues, all sizzle, no fizzle. I just can't resist. All right, no bite, just a little kiss.
So he's a real word craftsman.
Yeah.
He paints a picture with so few words, and you can just close your eyes and just imagine the story for
Yeah. I love it. Incredible.
you. There you go.
And what a special experience that must have been, realizing that he could overcome this, I would assume, very frustrating challenge of not being able to emote the way that he would like to.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
what a frustration, and what a delight it must have been to realize, oh my gosh, we can move past this and still create.
Exactly. I wouldn't say he reinvented himself, but he was able to take it to a plane that otherwise he wasn't able to do.
Yeah.
And he's a dear, dear friend. I've known him for more than half of his life.
Awesome.
So anyway, I've managed to play these various different styles of
Yeah.
music, and I'm always grateful for every opportunity. And as I said earlier in our interview, I've been totally blessed to be able to play with some of the greatest local musicians
Yeah.
and national musicians as well.
Absolutely.
I've played with Commander Cody and Jerry Lee Lewis's sister, Linda Gale Lewis.
Cool.
Rosie
Muddy
F-
Waters.
well,
Shared the
I
stage
didn't
with
play-
Muddy Waters.
I didn't play with Muddy Waters, but we shared the bill with Muddy.
Okay, cool.
At what was then called the Triangle Theater.
That's huge.
Yeah,
What a neat experience that must have been.
indeed.
You
Yeah.
keep the poster?
No, I don't. I wish I had.
Cool.
Anyway, I want to thank you so much for having me as part
Absolutely.
of your Drumroll interview.
Thank you so much for joining us. Do you have any final words of inspiration or messages or other promotions that you would like to share before we sign off today?
Well, I can only tell you the mantra of my life, and that is, don't say no to something that you think you don't know enough about. Just say yes and then figure it out. And that has kind of been the story of my life musically.
Yeah.
Never ever thinking that I could play the style of music that I'm being asked to play, and then figuring it out and doing it.
Yeah.
And
And you've done it in grand style, become a beloved Rochester musician. I'm sure many people have seen you and don't even realize that you've been involved with this huge library of really cool projects.
well, they are really cool projects, and as I said, I'm blessed and I'm grateful for it, and I count my blessings all the time.
And I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to chat with you after seeing you many times growing up as a Rochester music enjoyer. So I'm honored to have you join us today on Drumroll and making the trip down to Geneseo.
Well, thanks for having me, Sarah.
Absolutely.